Gene Deal is back speaking openly, and this time he says he's holding what he calls receipts that, in his view, never made it into 50 Cent's Netflix documentary. The headlines are already circulating. A story involving a $1 million check, claims of advance awareness surrounding Tupac, and a Biggie timeline that challenges what many people believe they already know. You're hearing that side now. People clicked on this because they heard Gene Deal is revealing details that 50 Cent allegedly didn't want included. So let's cut through the noise. 50 Cent sold his Diddy documentary to Netflix for millions, and when it was announced, many expected one name to be front and center, Gene Deal. The reason is simple. He was Diddy's bodyguard during the peak bad boy years and has been one of the most vocal people telling stories from that era for a long time. In that role, he wasn't just nearby, he was close to key moments. But when the series finally dropped, Gene Deal wasn't there at all. No interviews, no archive footage, no commentary, nothing. The new Netflix docuseries about Sean Diddy Combs has been making headlines for its never-before-seen footage showing the music mogul in the days leading up to his arrest. Combs is now reportedly threatening legal action against Netflix over the use of what he calls unauthorized footage. Behind the series are his longtime rival 50 Cent and director Alexandria Stapleton, who recently spoke with NBC News' Chloe Melas ahead of the release. Now, the word going around is simple: certain material didn't make the final cut. Conversations, tapes, and details, the kind of material that either gets included or gets erased. So today, people are breaking down why the connection reportedly fell apart and what many believe was left on the editing room floor. Here's what this story is steering toward. Claims that there was awareness ahead of time that Tupac was about to be attacked and that no one intervened. A $1 million check that Gene says he personally saw and believes connects back to Tupac's death. And a sequence of events around Biggie involving warnings, ignored signs, and decisions that, depending on how you interpret them, help create a dangerous situation. Before getting into that, here's some quick context. The documentary was marketed as a deep exposé, never-before-seen footage, behind-the-scenes access, and a release timed around major legal headlines. Online chatter suggested it was originally meant to be a longer series, but what viewers received was a 4-part Netflix release. The marketing promised everything: crimes, cover-ups, and the full story. At least, that's how it was sold. But the loudest criticism online is that the most important pieces were left out. So who is Gene Deal in all of this? He's a former bad boy bodyguard from the era everyone still debates. He was around during the East Coast versus West Coast tension. He was in proximity to Las Vegas when Tupac was shot. He was in Los Angeles when Biggie was killed. Whether people believe him or not, that's the position he's speaking from, someone tied closely to those moments and now talking publicly. Which brings the main question back again. Why wasn't he included in the documentary? Gene explains it like this. I'm going to put her on blast because she was telling me that what I was asking for was crazy and that they weren't spending money like that. I'm talking about I had footage, clothing, pictures, real material. You could figure out a way to pay someone for that. I told her about prices I had already been offered, and I had invoices to prove it, and she was talking to me like I was lying. I'm like, who do you think you're talking to? And then she started talking to me like I was lying. I was like, yo, who do you think you're talking to? She kept saying there was no way anyone was getting paid. No way who was getting paid. I told her, first of all, every time y'all come around with these documentaries, the first thing you tell people is that you don't pay. But people do get paid. I said, if you can make a picture look like it's worth $10,000 or $15,000, then you can pay me for my time sitting here with you. So one thing led to another, and I was like, all right then, forget it. I spoke to 50, and then she said, 50. And these were her exact words. 50 does not determine what goes in or out of this documentary. That's where the simplest explanation keeps coming back to money and control. Early on, the team wanted footage and stories. But then a conversation with director Alex Stapleton reportedly changed the entire tone. What people took away from that conversation was that 50 Cent didn't control the payments or the final content. Decisions were being made elsewhere, and the amount being offered felt disrespectful. That became the breaking point. Unique footage, first-hand stories, major moments in hip-hop history, and the offer felt like pocket change compared to the value of the project. So the decision was made to walk away and refuse to participate. But money isn't the only issue people keep pointing to. Another major reason being discussed is what didn't make it into the documentary at all. Details that would have made the project messier, riskier, and much harder to defend. Take the East Coast versus West Coast narrative. The documentary touches on it, but the criticism is that it skips what's being presented online as the real story behind bodyguard Jake Wolf's death. According to Gene, Wolf was not the gunman, and Mark Curry knows that to be true. He says the so-called East Coast, West Coast war was more like a personal feud, not a regional battle. When Puff got upset with Suge for allowing Misa to go out west and make money to support her family, he made it clear he was done dealing with both of them. Puff and Suge even had a conversation behind the House of Blues, asking if everything was okay, and this was while Tupac was still alive. If it had truly been a war, Suge wouldn't have been having any kind of "we good" conversation. If someone had killed his man, there would have been no discussion at all. Instead, Gene says Suge made Puff feel like there would be payback for what happened to Jake. The tension was between the two COs. It wasn't the entire East Coast against the West Coast. Artists were still traveling, still showing love, still working together. West Coast artists were coming to New York and getting love. East Coast artists were going out west and getting love. According to Gene, it was never coast versus coast. It was Bad Boy versus Death Row, and that's it. And it all came down to the two CEOs. Suge was actually trying to straighten things out. He was reaching out. Death Row on the East Coast was planning to bring in Eric B. They were going to bring in Big D too. Those guys were from the East Coast. They were looking for someone from Bad Boy to come to the meeting so they could resolve the issues between Pac and Big and between Death Row and Bad Boy. Puff is the one who refused. Puff refused to send a representative, and he also refused to come himself. He got mad at Zip because Zip and others were at the Mirage on 57th Street partying with Suge Knight. Puff got angry about that, and Zip ended up hanging up the phone. Now, about Mark Curry. He knows who killed Big J. It wasn't Wolf. It was a Jamaican guy from the Bronx. That person is dead now. The police ended up killing him at Magic City. I don't know his name, but Mark Curry knows it wasn't Wolf. When I was watching the documentary, Kirk Burroughs did confirm that Big didn't want to go to L.A. They were getting warnings not to go to L.A., but Diddy wanted to go anyway. Kirk said they had warnings, and that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Mark Curry's name keeps coming up because the belief is that he knows exactly who did it. This version rejects the government conspiracy angle and leans more toward a street explanation. The person described as a Jamaican man from the Bronx, and the story says police later killed him at Magic City. Then there's the idea that the East Coast versus West Coast label is misleading. In this telling, it wasn't coast versus coast. Artists were still traveling back and forth and getting love. The real conflict was Bad Boy Records versus Death Row Records. Diddy versus Suge Knight. That's what drove the tension. Another piece people say is missing is a peace attempt. The story being told is that Death Row tried to set up a meeting to squash the issues between Tupac and Biggie, but Bad Boy didn't show up. No representative was sent. Nobody came. Nothing was done to cool things down. The point being made isn't that this proves a crime. It's about responsibility. If peace was an option and it was ignored, that decision still carries weight, even if it's not the same as pulling a trigger. Now comes the part people call explosive. To be clear, what follows is a retelling of accusations and public narratives, not confirmed facts. The story going around is that there was advanced awareness around the Quad Studio situation, and someone close to the center was watching how it unfolded. The documentary talks about the 1994 Quad Studios shooting where Tupac was shot 5 times. What people say was left out is that Diddy, Andre Harrell, and Jimmy Henchman were together in Jimmy Henchman's office that same day. The way it's described is that Biggie and his crew didn't even know Diddy was there. Diddy was expected to go upstairs to Biggie's session, where Junior Mafia business was happening, but instead he stayed downstairs to keep an eye on the situation. They talked about the Quad Studios shooting in the documentary, but they left out the fact that Biggie and his people did not know Puff and Andre Harrell were in Jimmy Henchman's office that day. Let me repeat that clearly, so it doesn't get twisted. They did not mention that Andre Harrell, Puff Daddy, and Jimmy Henchman were all together in that office. Puff was there because he was watching things closely. Big was working on Junior Mafia material, and Puff controlled the publishing. I've said this before to a few people. I said it publicly before, too. Now you've got people running with the story like they knew it all along. But they'll tell you some story about doing an investigation, but it didn't happen like that. Puff was there to keep tabs on Big because he controlled Big's publishing. What people say happened next is that Big was advised by the same people who helped Puff secure that publishing in the first place. Those same people allegedly told Big to put the publishing under Tatiana's name or someone else's name, maybe Lil Cease or whoever he was writing for, so the money could still come to him without Puff controlling it. That's how that situation is described. Because of that, the belief is that Puff was there to spy on Big. While that was going on, Jimmy Henchman allegedly told Puff that Pac needed to be taught a lesson because Pac owed him money. That's why Pac was at the studio that night. He owed money and was supposed to work it off by doing a song with Lil Sean. That was the arrangement. But Pac was also talking disrespectfully to Jimmy Henchman. And Jimmy Henchman wasn't someone you talked to like that, allegedly, unless you were someone like 50 Cent. So the question becomes, did Puff know something was about to happen to Pac? According to this account, yes. He knew Pac was about to be confronted. He stayed there to see how it would play out. The argument is that if Puff was only there to check on Big, he would have gone upstairs to the studio session. He knew exactly which room Big was in. But he didn't go. He stayed put after Jimmy Henchman spoke about Pac. The claim is that he stayed specifically to see what would happen next. That's how it's being framed, and that's what the person telling the story stands on. So why would someone keep tabs on their own artist like that? The explanation people repeat is money and leverage. The belief is that Big was trying to maneuver out of a publishing situation, and Puff was watching closely. At the same time, a plan was allegedly spoken out loud in that room. Teach Pac a lesson. Tie it to a debt. A studio visit meant to settle it. And once disrespect entered the situation, things escalated. The key point being pushed is awareness. The idea that this wasn't random. That something was discussed beforehand. And that's why people ask the same question over and over. If nothing was expected, why not go upstairs to Big Session? Why wait? Then the narrative shifts into motive and personality. This part becomes personal. Tupac is described as naturally magnetic. When he walked into a room, attention followed. Women were drawn to him effortlessly. Puff, on the other hand, is described as needing money and status to get that same reaction. According to this telling, Puff relied on his position, his power, and his wealth. The story includes claims that Puff admired Tupac but also resented him. Not over music or fame, but over how people, especially women, responded to Pac. There's even a quote that gets circulated in this narrative where Puff allegedly said he didn't know how to talk to women. The takeaway being pushed from that angle is jealousy. Deep, personal jealousy that built over time. And to be clear, all of this is presented as accusations and retellings, not proven facts. But the claim remains heavy. That someone knew something was coming, didn't warn anyone, didn't step in, and let it play out. And the belief is that this entire part of the story was intentionally left out of the documentary. The money story isn't framed like internet gossip. It's framed as something that was personally witnessed. According to this account, Boom Dang, also known as Slick, was seen with a check for $1 million. There's debate online, with people saying only half of it was paid, maybe $500,000. But the person telling this story says they don't know anything about that. What they do know is this: they saw the check. They say they didn't ask for proof. No one asked for anything. The check was shown voluntarily. Boom Dang reportedly showed the check and then walked away. After that, a question came up. When did he get a record label? The response was, you know how Zip is. The follow-up question was, when did Zip get a record label? The answer given was that Zip received a $1 million check from Barry Hankerson and Jimmy Henchman for a record label connected to Blackground Records. If that's true, then it raises another issue. Jimmy Henchman and Puff were known to be close. And a check for $1 million isn't something you can hide. It goes through banks. It creates records, deposits, endorsements, processing, paperwork exists. If that check was real, it can be traced. The setting described is 112th Street. Gene Deal is sitting on a stoop with someone else when Eric Zip Von Zip walks up. He's showing off a new car, clearly proud, like he has something to prove. Then he flashes the check. Not quietly, but like a trophy. A $1 million check. The claim is that it came from Barry Hankerson and Jimmy Henchman and was tied to Blackground Records. The timing is what makes people focus on it. According to this account, it happens after Tupac's death. That's where the money trail angle comes in. Not cash handed off secretly, but a check that leaves a clear paper trail. And the challenge being put forward is simple: trace it. If anyone truly wants answers, follow the money. Another name that comes up is Kirk Burroughs, the former president of Bad Boy Records. He's described as meticulous, someone who kept detailed notes and files. The story connected to him is that he talked about paying for people to travel to Las Vegas around the time Tupac was killed. Even within this retelling, it's acknowledged that not every detail is personally confirmed. But the larger point remains: if records exist, paperwork can tell the story. The question hangs in the air: will anyone actually investigate, or will this stay buried like it has for nearly 30 years? If Puff had anything to do with breaking that money up, routing it, or using intermediaries to move it, records would still exist. $1 million check doesn't just disappear. Trace it. That's the challenge being issued. The man who allegedly received it is dead now, but the paper trail would still be there. Then the story shifts to Biggie. This is where it moves from money to warnings and movement. The timeline being told doesn't match the simplified version most people are familiar with. Gene Deal places himself at the scene the night Biggie was killed. Warnings start coming in. A call is described as coming from Wadsworth Hall, known on the street as Unique. At the time, he was reportedly in federal prison in Colorado. The call gets through, but only 2 words are said: "Best up." Then the line goes dead. The explanation given is that 3-way calls are detected and immediately cut off. A follow-up call is made to the woman who connected the call, and she confirms it really was Unique calling from Mecca Audio. Then another message comes through her: "They're coming out. They're coming to get y'all." Security immediately becomes the concern. Kirk Burroughs is contacted. Requests are made for more protection. But according to this account, there were only 4 security guards total for Diddy, Biggie, and everyone with them. It's described as nowhere near enough for the situation. Then a second warning comes in, this time from Chaz Williams, with the same message: "They're coming at y'all." Multiple reasons for possible retaliation are listed. What people believed happened to Jake Wolf. A phone call Biggie allegedly made that ended with the Winter Bagel spot in New York getting shot up. A separate conflict involving a Muslim man and an argument at Soul Train. Add to that the ongoing tension after Tupac's death, plus street rumors about sets and affiliations. The danger is treated as real. The timeline moves to Andre Harrell's house, where Diddy was staying. A detail gets mentioned almost jokingly at first. Diddy coming down the stairs wearing a white Beverly Hills hotel robe, joked about like it was stolen. Then the tone turns serious. The warning is delivered directly. "Yo, Puff, I got intel. People are going to come and try to kill us." The reaction described as immediate dismissal. "I don't want to hear that." Then comes the response: "You ain't got to go if you don't want to go." And then he walks out. Next detail. Clark Kent, a DJ and vice president at Motown Records, is described as being in Biggie's room the night before. The party later that night is framed as not random. It's described as being set up at the Peterson Museum, with Biggie allegedly saying, "D-Rock and Puff set this party up for me to go to." Outside, everything is on high alert. Blood's everywhere. A weapon held behind the back. Then an order is given: "Get in the car." Resistance follows. "How you gonna tell me how to do my job?" Then the threat comes: "Get in the car or lose your job at Bad Boy." So the car move happens. A command goes to the driver: "Kenny, run the next 3 lights. Get out fast." Then Tone says, "Big's name ain't coming across the light." A gun gets pointed. Shots ring out. Pop, 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 pop. Kenny guns the car forward. Panic and anger erupt. They're shooting at Big. Then the U-turn. Doors open on Biggie's car. Everyone gets out except him. Another Suburban gives chase, but the shooter's car disappears. Then comes the hospital decision. There's a hospital just 2 blocks away, but instead the drive lasts about 30 minutes. Biggie is bleeding. Time is draining. The question writes itself. Final words are reported. "Don't let him go to sleep. Keep him up." Biggie's last words are reported as, "Just do it." The belief expressed is that going to the closer hospital might have changed everything. Then comes the question of responsibility, not a direct accusation of pulling the trigger. Could Puff have been involved? Not by shooting, but by creating the conditions? The argument made is this: when you set up an atmosphere for something to happen, how involved are you when it does happen? When you put people in positions where they can get hurt, knowing the danger, does responsibility follow? He knew something was coming. He was told. He was warned before they left. Mays warned him. Others warned him. The point made is that Gene Deal is not the only one who knew these things. He's just the one who spoke publicly first. Others are now slowly coming forward. The argument isn't that Puff pulled the trigger or even paid someone to do it. It's about tactics, creating tension, ignoring warnings, refusing peace, fueling hostility, setting the stage, releasing records like Who Shot Ya after Tupac was shot, turning up pressure instead of cooling things down, refusing meetings that could have squashed the beef entirely. The core claim stays the same, not that he did it, but that he helped create the conditions that allowed it to happen. That's the accusation sitting underneath everything. Biggie going to Los Angeles after multiple warnings is treated as another decision that increased the risk. The idea that violence was already being discussed in the background is used to push the same question again. If you build an atmosphere where someone gets hurt, and then someone does get hurt, do you share responsibility? Again, this is not framed as pulling a trigger. It's not framed as direct payment. It's framed as a chain reaction. Situations being set up, seeds being planted, escalation being chosen, peace being refused, and the belief that those choices helped create a dangerous environment that ended in tragedy. So now the bigger question becomes this: why would 50 Cent leave all of this out of his documentary? 3 reasons keep coming up. First, legal risk. The Keefe D case connected to Tupac is still pending. A documentary leaning into unverified accusations can turn into a legal nightmare fast. Lawyers tend to shut down anything that could trigger lawsuits, defamation claims, or interfere with an active case. Second, credibility. 50 wants the documentary taken seriously. Something that feels like a cultural moment. Something with impact. Gene Deal is entertaining, but not everyone believes everything he says. Some label him a conspiracy guy. Cutting him out can be seen as a move to keep the series cleaner, harder to attack, and less vulnerable to legal pressure. And speaking of legal pressure, Diddy's lawyers already responded. A cease and desist was reportedly sent to Netflix. The documentary was called a shameful hit piece, with accusations of unauthorized or stolen footage. From a business standpoint, adding more unprovable accusations could give them even more ammunition. Third, money. The price was allegedly too high. Gene wanted to be paid what he felt his footage and story were worth. 50 is a businessman. If the numbers don't make sense, the cut gets made. Business is business. While all of this plays out online, there's extra drama circulating as well. One story going around claims Diddy sent 50 Cent flowers at Club 11 in Miami, and not the friendly kind. According to a version people keep repeating, they were allegedly funeral-style flowers. Before wrapping up, a quick reminder. If you're rocking with Mike Tripp, hit subscribe, hit like, and drop a comment, because this channel focuses on what mainstream edits leave out. Now, after hearing all of this, it's easy to see why some people believe the story. The details are specific. The delivery is confident. The narrative has stayed consistent over the years. But let's be clear, these are still allegations. This is a narrative, not a verdict. Listen, but keep your head on straight. The main takeaway being pushed is that 50 either couldn't or wouldn't include this material. Advanced awareness around Quad Studios, the $1 million check story, the warnings before Biggie's death, and the broader idea that certain choices and refusals to de-escalate helped fuel the atmosphere. That kind of content is exactly what gets labeled too risky. Maybe it was legal reasons. Maybe it was credibility. Maybe it was money. Whatever the reason, it didn't make the final cut, and now it's being pushed directly to the public. Now the question gets passed to you. Do you believe this account? Do you think Diddy had any involvement in what happened to Tupac and Biggie? And what do you think happens next as these allegations continue to go public?